Today, we are going to be talking about this guitar. This started as a fresh find, which became a unfortunate find, and then it became kind of a mystery, and then now we've gone full circle and ended up learning something from this guitar about this brand that I was not familiar with. Let's dig in. This is an Orville Les Paul that we just got in real recently. A friend of mine actually found this one and sent it over for me to check out and then potentially buy for the shop. And the second that I took this out of the box, I was like, there's so many things wrong here. For those of you unfamiliar, Orville is a line that Gibson licensed to be made in Japan back in the late 80s and 90s. Their idea was to do a line that was between the Korean-made Epiphones and the USA-made Gibsons. Back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s especially, a lot of different brands in Japan, such as Tokai, Greco, Ibanez, Bernie, were making really great copies of the Gibson guitars. They were making like American-style guitars, such as the Les Paul, Flying V, SG. They're making them in Japan and making them really, really well. In the 70s, that was really important as Gibson's distribution was not as strong then. As the years went on, obviously Gibson would get better distribution within Japan as the market really wanted it. Part of that was Gibson deciding that, hey, we want to be involved in the whole MIJ guitar game, and they decided to basically license their own line of Japan-made Gibson guitars, which is how the Orville by Gibson and Orville guitars came about. We did an entire video on Orville. We'd love if you check that out after this video if you're not as familiar. But to kind of summarize some things, there was an Orville by Gibson line that came out first in 1988, made in Japan. These had lacquer finishes and USA Gibson parts. About a year after that, in 1989, they introduced a line that was a notch below that, just called Orville. These guitars were made in Japan with poly finishes, and they had Japanese pickups instead of the Gibson USA pickups. There's a lot more to it. You should go check out the Orville video if you haven't already, but that kind of sets the stage for where we are. So let's talk about what's weird on this guitar. As soon as I took it out of the box, the first thing I noticed was that the Orville logo was just straight horizontal instead of being slightly angled. On any other Orville we've had, they are always at a little bit of an angle. This is just flat, which did not look right. The Les Paul model text there is slightly crooked, not sick. Getting down from that, you have a 3-screw truss rod cover. You would never see this on a Japanese-made Orville by Gibson guitar. This is like a Epiphone type cover. Also, they never had Gibson written on the Orville covers. Looking at the back, I mean, this joint is just not really correct for what you would expect from a MIJ guitar. The serial number format is not correct for Orville. Getting down to the body, you can see the way the top is on here. It's actually not too bad of a top, but it's really thin and not just not what you would see on a MIJ Orville or Orville by Gibson guitar. Weird pick guard. There is a DiMarzio pickup in the bridge, so that's very sick. That's changed. That's nothing to do with this guitar's authenticity or origin or any of that. This plate's weird. There is flathead bridge posts, which you would never see on these types of guitars. As you can probably see as I detail through this, just absolutely nothing was right on this guitar, and I knew immediately this is not a Japanese-made Les Paul. So obviously the first thing I would think of is like, oh, is this guitar fake? Did somebody fake an Orville guitar? Obviously there's tons of Gibson fakes floating around. Were they faking Orvilles, which I've never heard of. I'm sure somebody out there has made that happen for some reason. But I very quickly started realizing like, this is definitely not fake. It's just different and it's not Japanese. After doing some research online, I was able to find one other example of somebody having a guitar that has all the things I just noted. There was somebody on a forum that had a guitar very similar to this, a little bit different finish, but totally the same specs, totally the same things that threw me off. And they were asking if the guitar was fake. Unfortunately, nobody in the forum post really had anything that relevant to add to that guitar, just saying, oh, you know, it doesn't look right, it's probably fake, there's something weird with it. And so that showed me that, yeah, something weird's going on, but there is at least another one of these floating around. Didn't feel like this was a fake guitar. For context, if this was fake, that would have not been a problem. Hadn't even like bought this guitar yet or anything. It was definitely not a big deal. I was ready to just write it off as, we don't want this. Some clues started showing and I started realizing this is actually something really interesting. Not like high end, not crazy valuable or anything like that, but just something really interesting. Started noticing that like basically everything on this is like one-to-one with a Samick made Korean Epiphone.
삼익, 삼익악기
from very late 80s to early 90s. Now, to my knowledge, Samick was not doing any sort of open book headstock Epiphones at the time that were at least the exact shape like this. There was some customs that they did that had something close to the open book headstock, but it was a little bit different. And I started realizing really quickly, I'm like, this is definitely Samick factory based on that serial like that. There's nothing fake about this. It's just not like a high-end Japanese made guitar. It just seemed like this has to be something almost like in between like an Epiphone of the time and an Orville. This serial here dates to 1990, which was just after they started doing the standard tier like Orville guitars. It's really easy to assume like, oh, everything was nice and clean. There was Korean Epiphone, there was Orville, there's Orville by Gibson, and then there was Gibson. Yamano Gaki was the company that worked with Gibson to make all the Orville and Epiphone guitars happen at the time. It's really easy to assume that, you know, the lines were very clear. There's Korean Epiphone, there's Orville by Gibson, and then of course the American-made Gibson guitars. The reality is it probably wasn't that clean, and they probably tried a lot of different things before they landed exactly where they are now. This is somewhat after the fact, we're just finishing up the audio for this, but my guess of how this guitar exists is that Yamano Gaki tried this as an experiment. You could maybe consider this a prototype, I don't know. But maybe they did a short run of these, were not pleased with the results, and decided to not further pursue this because that's total speculation. But we're just looking at the photos of the other one that I found online, and it has the same issues as this, with like the Les Paul text being crooked and the tuners being crooked, and it seems like they were very consistent in their inconsistency. We're speculating even further here. We just came up with this, but a lot of the Japanese brands follow this like good, better, best methodology. They'll have the base tier model, they'll have a middle tier model, and then they'll have like their highest tier model. I think the overall picture is gonna be good is Epiphone, better is the Orville lines, and then best is the proper Gibson stuff. But maybe they were considering taking a step further and making a good, better, best within the Orville branding, with this being the good, the base tier, the Japanese-made Orville as the better, and then the best being, of course, the Orville by Gibson line. Now, they didn't end up pursuing that, but more speculation with absolutely no concrete evidence that they were thinking that. It's pretty commonplace online if you look into discussions of is there Orville made in Korea or not. There's a lot of people that say, oh, there definitely was Orville made in Korea, and then a lot of people that say that doesn't exist. I always assume that there was no Korean Orville. The biggest thing that people will bring up is the K sticker Orville guitars. These are made in Japan. The K stands for Kuramai, Yamano Gaki's wholesale division. This does not stand for Korea. So a lot of times people will see these guitars and think, oh, is that made in Korea? And you can very quickly disprove that. But I think because of that, it's blurred the lines of like, was there ever something else that was made in Korea? We know the K stickers aren't. Nothing else that's been well documented is made in Korea. We only really know of Japanese-made Orville guitars. But everything on this was telling me the exact opposite. I did some pretty deep research and couldn't find like any documentation of Korean-made Orville that was confirmed. I went to my friend Keita, who runs the shop Goodness Guitars in Saitama, Japan. He has been working in various guitar shops for many decades and is one of the most knowledgeable people that I have ever met on not only Japanese guitars, but just all kinds of guitars. So I sent him some photos and I was like, listen, have you ever seen anything like this? Is this like a Korean made Orville? Is this something fake? Like what's going on with this? And he very quickly responded to me completely unfazed and was just like, oh yeah, that's a Korean made Orville, lowest model tier they ever made, and they didn't make many of them. I noticed that they never had anything like this in the catalogs, and sure enough, he confirmed immediately. He was like, yep, that was never in a catalog. Dealers could order these, but they were not very popular. At the same time, he said there was actually a similar line of Grecos that were made in Korea, the same thing, sticker serial like that. They didn't really catch on and didn't see like wide distribution, but they were definitely out there. He confirmed immediately. He said that guitar is not fake. It's also nothing special, but that is just a Korean Orville, and yes, they exist, and here is the proof. We have accidentally uncovered something really interesting. So with all that being said, I have to come to the conclusion that we have found it. We have found a Korean-made Orville. All the evidence we have points to that is the case for this. It's tough because there's just no documentation out there to exactly confirm what this is, since it was from potentially such a small like production run. But I think with everything I've been able to put together here, we can say there was Korean Orville. We don't know how big of a production run it was, but here it is. Let's plug this in and play it, see what it plays like, and see what it sounds like. Special note, this is a DiMarzio pickup, so that's gonna sound like a DiMarzio pickup, not whatever would have been in here from the factory. now that we have all of the nerdy stuff out of the way, let's just talk about this from a guitar perspective. Playing wise, it's actually not bad. I can say the same thing for a lot of other Korean instruments from this time. Well, it's easy to sit here and look at it and go, oh, this isn't perfect, whatever. You know, it plays all right. It's not as good as any of the MIJ Les Pauls we get. I would definitely prefer a regular Orville or Bernie or Tokai or Greco or any of those things. It's not on that level, but compared to a Korean equivalent Epiphone, yeah, it's not bad, it's fine. Fretwork's actually not too bad on here, so I back that. Is this anything special? Because of the lore, I would say kind of. I think it's maybe historically significant. But as far as looking at it from just the perspective of the guitar for what it is, no. This comes from an era of Korea that is not what it is now, or even what it was in the 2000s. The production quality was just not there yet. There are so many little things on here on this guitar that are so far from perfect. I mean, look at the tuner. It's this is crooked. Like I said, the Les Paul model text is crooked. All kinds of little things here that are, to be honest, not great. This definitely does not meet the quality standards of what I look for when curating inventory for a flash-footed gear. This does not hold up to the Japanese guitars at all. This feels very much on par with the equivalent Epiphones of the time, which another tidbit of information Keita gave me was that these were basically identical to the Epiphones. They made Orville branded ones, they made Epiphone branded ones. Both made in the Samick factory with almost identical specs outside of the headstock. So, would I look for one of these? No, for two reasons. A, I don't think they're that great. B, I don't think you're gonna find one. I don't want this video to inspire doubt if you're out there looking for Orvilles and you're trying to make sure you get a Japanese one. You would be extremely hard pressed to accidentally find one of these. And it would be so easy to tell that it's that I just don't really see that being a problem. So keep in mind that 99% of Orvilles out there are going to be made in Japan. Whether it's the ink serial ones, whether it is the K sticker, they're all made in Japan. Finding a Korean guitar like this is a total outlier, and we have probably had over 100 Orville and Orville by Gibson guitars come to the shop at this point, and I had never even seen one of these before. So I don't know how many of these are floating around, but I would not worry about accidentally running into one of these. What are we gonna do with this? I don't know yet. I'm not in a rush to list this. I actually don't really want to sell this until we can find some sort of hard documentation on it. While I am very confident in all of my findings here, I still like to back everything up with some sort of documentation when we go to sell something. And unfortunately, we just haven't found anything for this yet. Like I said, this doesn't really meet my criteria for what I look for our main shop. So if this is to get sold, it's going to be on our second shop, which is just a reverb page called Flash-Footed Warehouse Deals. List a lot of stuff there that maybe doesn't fit the core inventory. Also, anytime we get parts or certain pro audio stuff, rather than putting it on the main shop, it gets put on that reverb shop. Have a lot of fun finding stuff for that shop as well, but just a very different criteria goes in. Everything that's on flashfootergear.com is curated and it's there for a reason. So since at least the 80s, there's always been a pretty big debate on made in Japan versus made in Korea. Now it's obviously well accepted that the made in Japan stuff's always gonna be much higher end, but over the years, it's definitely changed how close the Korean stuff can get to something made in Japan. In more recent years, obviously Korea has started making a lot better instruments. I would just even say in the last 2 decades, their quality has really gone up a lot. We don't cover a lot of guitars made in Korea, so let us know down below in the comments if you'd be interested in us doing any dives to stuff like that. It'd be cool to shoot out maybe a newer ESP that's made in Japan versus an LTD that's made in Korea. As I've played a lot of LTDs that are Korean made and still super solid, but the ESP Japan stuff is usually a good bit better. Maybe we'll do a video on that. This video is definitely a little different for us. This guitar is definitely a little different than what we typically deal with. So I had a lot of fun doing this and a lot of fun doing the research. I want to say a really big thank you to our friend Keita at Goodness Guitars for all the assistance here. Knowing people with that kind of wealth of knowledge where they've been in this for decades has always been really valuable. Never be afraid to ask the people that you know question. They might know the answers, because that is the only way that we will continue to learn about this hobby that we all love. If you are interested in getting a Les Paul, whether from Gibson or Orville, or even just a Les Paul type guitar from brands like Tokai, Greco, Bernie, all the good stuff, we would love if you checked out our site at flashfootergear.com or scan the QR code here. We have a lot of them right now, so you might find something you like. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share the video, all that good stuff, and we'll see you in another video soon. Bye. There you go. Boom. Great. Now that we get to the fun part.